Hello, my name is Daniel. Thank you for being here with me today. If you enjoy real, heartbreaking cheating stories from Reddit, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to me. This is one of those stories that leaves a quiet ache behind, the kind that makes you question whether trust, once broken, can ever truly be whole again. The original poster, whom I'll call Brielle, is 25 years old and lives in a quiet rental home just outside Olympia, Washington. Her boyfriend, whom we'll call Theo, is 31. They've been together for 2 years and have been living under the same roof for most of that time. In the early months of their relationship, Theo had what he now refers to as an emotional slip, but Brielle knows exactly what it was. An 8-month-long emotional affair with a former flame. When she found out, the world she was building with him cracked apart. They separated for a while. During that time, Theo told her he'd taken a hard look at himself. He admitted that emotional cheating is real and no different from betrayal of the body. He begged for another chance, and somehow, slowly, Brielle gave it. Since then, life had settled into something almost gentle between them. They worked on things, communicated better, made plans for the future. Then, 2 months ago, they were both laid off from their jobs. The sudden stillness should have been a blessing in disguise. It meant long mornings together, coffee and silence, talking about dreams and scrolling job boards. For the first time, they had nothing but time and each other. So when the first message arrived, it felt like a slap in the dark. It was 4 a.m. on New Year's Day. Brielle was curled up on the couch, scrolling her phone under a blanket when it vibrated with a message from an unknown number. It wasn't just some vague accusation. The sender laid out in cruel detail claims that Theo had been cheating on her for the past 3 weeks. They even described specific features of his body, things only someone close would know. Brielle's stomach twisted. Only about 20 people had her number. None of them were connected to Theo. She never posted it online. The thought that someone not only had access to her number, but also had intimate knowledge of her boyfriend sent ice into her bones. She walked into the bedroom, phone trembling in hand, and woke Theo. What followed was a blur of anxiety, confrontation, and spreadsheets. Theo spent the entire next week pulling together phone records, bank statements, location histories, everything he could to prove that the claims were false. And the truth was, they hadn't really been apart in those 3 weeks. They even spent a full week out of town together for Christmas. Brielle had access to everything. His phone, his email, his apps, nothing seemed off. There were no strange numbers, no secret devices, no signs that he was even capable of carving out time to cheat. Eventually, Brielle let it go. Or tried to. Theo had shown her everything. He was transparent, even frustrated, and she had no proof that the message wasn't just a cruel trick. She told herself it had to be sabotage, someone trying to destroy what they had rebuilt. But then, last night, it happened again. Another message, another anonymous number. This time, the sender claimed Theo had come to their house and yelled at them for revealing the truth. They said this had happened just days ago, on the only full day Theo had been apart from Brielle since the first message. Her chest clenched. It was too specific to ignore. Once more, she confronted Theo. Once more, he laid out receipts, timelines, locations. But something felt different this time. The panic in his eyes had been replaced by exhaustion. Brielle couldn't tell if she was being unfair or too forgiving. The weight of that uncertainty crushed her. She didn't want to throw everything away over something that might not even be real, but she also didn't want to spend her life hoping he wasn't lying again. Was she being naive? Was she falling for a repeat performance? Her mind circled back to the woman he emotionally cheated on 2 years ago. Was it her? Was she trying to sabotage them? Or, maybe, Brielle thought bitterly, she was back in the picture, this time not just in Theo's mind, but in his arms. It's hard to know what to believe when you've been betrayed before. Harder still when the person who hurt you is also the only one insisting they've changed. And as the new year began, instead of hope, Brielle felt something far lonelier settle into her chest. Doubt. And that doubt, once it seeps in, never really leaves. Brielle sat by the window of their little home just outside Olympia, watching the drizzle tap against the glass. Every raindrop felt like a question she couldn't answer. The silence in the room had grown heavier in the days since the second message. Theo was trying, showing her his phone, his emails, his timelines, but no matter how open he seemed, her heart still thudded with unease. She wanted to ask him directly, "What do you think is happening here?" But every time she tried, the words caught in her throat. She had considered what a Reddit commenter had suggested, to flip the script, sit him down, tell him not to interrupt, and just unload everything. Tell him the stress was wrecking her, that she couldn't breathe without second-guessing everything, that her mind kept slipping into worst-case scenarios on repeat, that she was giving him one last honest chance, 60 seconds of amnesty. If he had cheated, she would try to forgive him, like before, but if he admitted to anything, she would walk away, for good this time. And maybe it wasn't even about the truth anymore. Maybe she just needed him to say something that would let her feel like she wasn't crazy. Other commenters had chimed in too. One asked if Theo had any bitter exes, someone with a grudge and too much time on their hands. Brielle had already checked everything: his phone, his texts, his email, even his Venmo history. But what about his Facebook, Instagram? Had she missed something in plain sight? She wasn't sure what scared her more, the idea that he had been unfaithful again, or the idea that someone out there hated her enough to manufacture this entire nightmare. One message stuck with her more than the rest. It pointed out that whoever was sending these texts clearly wasn't interested in breaking the news gently. There was nothing kind or cautious about them. They weren't written out of concern. They were built to hurt. Whoever it was didn't care if she was devastated. They wanted her to be. That alone made her question everything again. If Theo really was cheating, then he was doing it with someone toxic enough to play this cruel game. And if he wasn't, then they were both being targeted by someone cold and relentless. The saddest part was that even with all the evidence in front of her, timelines that made sense, nothing suspicious in his records, the doubt hadn't gone away. It lingered like a shadow, always in the corner of her mind. One person advised her to stop playing detective. Instead of rifling through more documents like it was an audit, maybe it was time to sit with Theo and work together, make a plan, try to figure out who might be doing this and why. But that required vulnerability. It required trust. And trust, for Brielle, had already been broken once. Rebuilt slowly, fragile, even now. She thought about how quickly everything could change with just a few sentences, how a relationship can survive a storm but still be sunk by the aftershocks. That's what this felt like. Aftershocks from something that happened long ago but still cracked the foundation. Another commenter had said something that hit hard. Good liars are very good at lying, and some of them can keep it up for years. Brielle wondered if she had become too good at pretending to believe. Maybe she wanted so badly for things to be okay that she was ignoring the obvious signs. But what were the signs, really? Theo had given her full access. He didn't push back when she checked his things. He didn't seem panicked, just tired. And maybe that exhaustion came from the same place hers did, from trying to hold on to something that kept slipping away. Still, she decided to push a little further. She asked more questions, small ones at first, harmless. But Theo grew tense. His answers became shorter, defensive. And when she brought up the second message, something in his eyes shifted. Not guilt, not exactly, but frustration. Almost like he was hurt she didn't believe him. That was the moment she knew something was off again. It wasn't about a single lie. It was about all the cracks that had never been filled in. The silence, the unease, the lingering fear that love could mask something darker. So she dug deeper, and what she found next made her heart ache all over again. Brielle couldn't sleep. The doubt had grown into something gnawing, a kind of ache that lived in her chest and wouldn't let her breathe. So she picked up Theo's phone again, not because she wanted to catch him in something, but because she needed to feel like she still had control over something, anything. And there it was. A single message from October, tucked away in the call log. A brief exchange with the same ex he once swore to never speak to again, the one he'd emotionally betrayed her with. They'd made a clear boundary back then, no contact, ever, but he broke it. The text was short, just a few words, but he hadn't told her, and worse, he'd deleted it. That alone should have been enough to walk away, enough to stop wondering. Still, she needed more. Against her better judgment, she messaged the woman herself. Her name was Meredith. Brielle had never spoken to her, never wanted to, but she asked for a screenshot of their conversation. The exchange was polite, even boring. There was no flirting, no red flags. But the damage wasn't in what was said. It was in what had been hidden. Back when Brielle and Theo were broken up for a short time after the first affair, he'd told her there had been no one else, swore up and down he'd stayed completely alone. She told him it didn't matter, she just wanted the truth. But now they both had HPV. And that truth, the one she begged for, started to unravel piece by piece. First, Theo admitted they'd hung out, then it was just kissing, then heavy petting, then hands, then oral, then finally he admitted they had tried to sleep together, but it didn't work. Each confession came slowly, over weeks, sometimes months, a trickle of truth, always just enough to make Brielle feel like she was finally at the bottom of it. But it never ended. Now she carried an STD and the weight of months of half-truths. Theo still insisted he didn't know where the texts were coming from, but Brielle couldn't believe that anymore. If he couldn't be honest about what he did when they were broken up, something she told him she was willing to forgive, how could she believe he wasn't lying now? She asked around, friends, family, even people she barely kept in touch with. Nobody seemed to know anything. And then, strangely, Theo got a message too, from the same type of anonymous number, the same tone, the same words. That changed everything. No one had both of their numbers, not her parents, not her sister, not even mutual friends. Whoever was sending these texts wasn't some random stranger. And Theo, he didn't seem interested in finding out who it was. He didn't ask questions, didn't seem shocked, just tired, distant, defensive. That scared her more than anything else. So Brielle packed a small bag and left, moved back into her mom's house across town. She didn't have hard evidence of an affair, but her heart was tired. Her trust was bleeding out, and maybe that was evidence enough. She didn't post the texts, Reddit rules, but people kept asking. So when she returned with an update, It came with the full weight of what she'd just learned. It had been sabotage. The person sending those cruel, escalating messages was someone she'd once called a friend. His name was Mason. She'd known him for years. He'd always been intense, protective, quick to worry, but she never thought he'd go this far. When she reread the texts for the 10th time, preparing to take them to the police, something in the phrasing struck her as familiar. The way certain words were spelled, the way the insults felt oddly specific. It clicked. She confronted him. At first he denied it, but Brielle pushed, and finally he broke. He admitted everything. He didn't like Theo, didn't believe he deserved her, thought he'd stir things up enough she'd walk away, that maybe he'd have a chance then. He used her family connections to collect information, crafted each message to sound believable, and in doing so, he nearly destroyed them. Brielle demanded that he come forward to her family and clear Theo's name. To his credit, he did, but she told him to stay out of her life after that. The damage was done. She spent the next 12 hours trying to piece things back together with Theo, apologizing, explaining. He forgave her, said he understood. He even offered more openness, real-time updates, photos, full access to everything. But still, it didn't feel the same. He hadn't jumped to defend himself when it mattered. She hadn't given him the benefit of the doubt when it counted. They had both faltered. Maybe they still could rebuild. Maybe they couldn't. But for now, Brielle was just grateful he hadn't betrayed her, and heartbroken that someone else had. The next story came from someone who had stumbled across an old post while searching for comfort, a quiet reflection shared in the aftermath of losing someone they loved. Her name is Elena. She's 41 now, but her journey through grief began just over 3 years ago, in the cold quiet of January 2020. It started with a dull ache in her mom's lower back, subtle, nagging, easy to dismiss. Elena's mom had always been active, healthy, and fiercely independent, the kind of woman who took long walks every morning, kept up with yoga, and refused to let age slow her down. So when the pain worsened slowly over 5 months, no one panicked, not her husband, not her kids, not even Elena. They all chalked it up to something minor, a pulled muscle maybe, a virus taking its time to leave. Her mom had gone to the doctor a few times, had blood work done, and nothing came back alarming. The doctors weren't worried, so neither were they. That's something Elena still carries with her, the guilt of not pushing harder, of trusting too much, too easily. Just after Christmas, everything changed. Elena was at work when she got a call from her dad. Her voice trembled as she recalled that moment. Her dad had come home and found her mom on the living room floor, writhing in pain. He'd rushed her to the hospital. Elena begged him to keep her updated, but hours passed, no word. By late afternoon, she finally got a reply. Her father's voice through the phone was distant, almost hollow. The doctors had discovered that her mother's liver wasn't functioning properly. They were ordering a scan, more tests, more waiting. Then, much later, Elena got another message, this time from her mom. They were coming to her house to talk, and that was the moment her heart dropped. She didn't know why, she couldn't explain it, but she knew something was wrong, horribly wrong. She and her husband sat in the living room in silence. Her husband had lost both of his parents the year before, and part of her clung to that logic. Lightning wouldn't strike twice, right? But then the door opened. Her mom sat down on the couch across from her. Her dad perched beside her, pale and shaking. Elena asked what was going on, asked them to tell her, to say it. Her mother didn't flinch, didn't cry. She spoke with a strange kind of stillness. "It's not good news," she said softly. "It's really not good news." The room swam. Elena felt her stomach turn, but still she wasn't ready for what came next. "They found a mass," her mom continued, "in my pancreas. That's what's causing the back pain. It's pushing against my spine." Elena blinked. "A mass? You mean cancer?" Her mother nodded. Elena tried to stay calm, mirroring her mom's expression. "Okay, but what are they going to do?" Her mother's voice didn't waver. "There's nothing they can do." Her dad couldn't hold it together any longer. He broke, sobbing beside her. Elena's husband sat stunned, unable to speak. But her mother, she stayed composed. She explained that the cancer had already spread to her liver, that there were no treatment options, no cure. The words the doctors used were life-limiting. They estimated she had 8 to 12 months, with palliative care. Elena's brain struggled to process what was being said. Her mother had always been the strong one, 65 years old, full of life, always in motion. She wasn't supposed to be dying, not now, not like this. Her mother's next words still haunt her to this day. "Don't be sad," she said softly. "I've had a good life." Elena wanted to scream. She wanted to shake her, to tell her to fight. But she couldn't find her voice, couldn't cry, couldn't move. She just sat there, numb, hollow, while her father and husband fell apart beside her. She remembers so little of the conversation after that, just fragments, her mom saying they still had to tell her brother, that they were going to his house next to break the news to him and his wife. She said it gently, matter-of-factly, like someone confirming the next step in a checklist. After they left, Elena stood up without thinking and walked into the kitchen. She poured herself a cup of coffee, but never drank it. As she stood there, her eyes welled up, and the tears finally began to fall. It wasn't an emotional release, it was mechanical, as if her body had decided it couldn't hold the pressure anymore. She couldn't even say what she was feeling, only that something had cracked. The world hadn't stopped turning, but hers had. And now it felt like she was trapped in a memory that hadn't finished writing itself. Her mother's voice, that soft, steady voice, kept playing in her mind. "I've had a good life." Elena couldn't stop hearing it, couldn't stop seeing her mother sitting across from her with so much grace, delivering the news like it was her job to protect everyone from the horror of it. Weeks passed, but time felt slippery. Her mother began deteriorating far quicker than any of them expected. The pain worsened by the day. The doctors tried to adjust her medication, but the cancer was already racing through her body, cruel and unstoppable. Despite it all, her mother never lost her composure. While the rest of us clung to false hope, she faced reality with quiet acceptance. Elena wished she could have had just one truly honest conversation with her before it was too late, about her fears, about death, about what she wanted. But the denial was too strong. Every time Elena tried to bring it up, even gently, her throat would close, and she'd retreat into silence. One day her mother asked her softly, "How do you feel about all this?" Elena could barely speak. "It feels strange," she whispered. Her mom nodded, eyes cast towards the garden, and said nothing more. They just sat there, in silence, watching the wind move through the trees. Each day that followed chipped away a little more of her mother. Whether it was the morphine or the cancer, her mental clarity began to slip. She forgot how to use utensils. She struggled to form coherent sentences. She'd fall asleep mid-conversation or stare past everyone in the room like they weren't there. It was the slowest kind of heartbreak, to watch the person you love slowly drift away before your eyes. By the 4th week, She was admitted to a hospice. The goal was to manage her pain better, to adjust the medication, to make her more comfortable. Elena and her father visited every day. Her mother insisted she wasn't coming home. Her dad argued gently that she would. Elena kissed her cheek the night before everything changed and said, "I'll see you tomorrow, Mom. We'll get you out of here, okay?" Her mother smiled faintly and nodded, but her eyes said something else, something final. The next day, just after lunch, Elena's father called. He was already at the hospice with her husband, and he said her mom wanted everyone to come immediately. Elena didn't hesitate. She left work and drove straight there. When she arrived, she found her husband and father standing outside her mom's room, dazed and pale. "What's happening?" she asked. Her husband looked at her and shook his head. "We don't know. She was talking to us, and then she just collapsed." The nurses had been called in. They were still inside. Elena stood between the two men she loved most, her body still refusing to believe the truth. She wanted to hope, to cling to anything. But when the nurses finally opened the door and motioned for them to come in, she felt her heart begin to break. Her mother lay flat on the bed, eyes wide open, staring blankly at the ceiling. She wasn't moving. Only her chest, barely rising and falling, made it clear she was still alive. Elena walked slowly toward the bed, sat beside her, and took her hand. It felt warm, familiar, fragile. She whispered softly, "You've been a wonderful mother, an amazing friend, and I love you so much." She told her she could let go, and with one final rattling breath, she did. A single tear slipped from her mother's eye as her chest fell still. Someone later told Elena that the tear meant healing, that her mother's pain was finally gone. She prays every day that it's true. I hope so. I really do. Those final moments with my mom are etched into my memory with an aching clarity. She was so still, so quiet, her chest no longer rising, her face frozen in time. She didn't look like herself anymore. That gentle light in her eyes, the warmth in her smile, it was gone. All that was left was the shell of someone I loved more than I'd ever been able to say. It was the most devastating moment of my life, the hardest thing I've ever had to witness. But I wouldn't trade being there, not for anything. I'm thankful I had the chance to hold her hand, to tell her I loved her, to help guide her gently out of this world. There was pain, yes, unbearable pain, but there was also something strangely peaceful in those final seconds, and I carry that with me, even now. Still, I won't lie, that moment broke something in me. For years after, it haunted my dreams. Sometimes it still does. There are nights I wake up gasping for air, thinking I'm back in that room, reliving the final breath, the tear that slipped down her cheek. But if I hadn't been there, if I'd missed it, that would have haunted me far worse. In the months that followed her passing, I didn't feel much of anything. I wasn't angry or crying constantly. I was just numb. Life moved on around me like a blur, and I stood in place trying to understand how the world hadn't stopped. But slowly, something shifted. Grief has a strange way of changing you. It strips you bare, but in the rawness, you start to see what really matters. I began to understand that these moments, the quiet ones, the ordinary ones, are everything. I stopped taking people for granted. I started paying more attention. Even in my numbness, I felt something like reverence for the fragility of life. And then there were the signs. Things that happened after Mom passed that I can't explain. Little things, but they meant the world to me. The morning after she died, my son, only 6 at the time, woke up and began drawing butterflies, page after page in every color. He had never shown much interest in butterflies before, but now they were all he wanted to draw. He was obsessed for months, and somehow they became our symbol for her. One day, my dad walked into the living room and found that all the picture frames above her piano had shifted, crooked and out of place, though the house had been still all night. Another time, her old alarm clock in the study, one that hadn't been set in years, started ringing on its own. It woke me up. My dad had developed a dangerous fever that night. That clock might have saved him. There was a time I saw a deer dart in front of me in broad daylight while walking through a suburban neighborhood with no woods nearby. Another night I woke to find a soft orb of light hovering above me, just for a second before it disappeared through the wall. I told myself it was nothing, but part of me believed it was her. Even my husband had an experience. One afternoon, he felt an urge to take a different route to work. He turned down a street he'd never walked before and stopped in front of a small shop. In the window was a canvas painting, a field of soft blue butterflies. He bought it instantly. Was it coincidence? Was it hope, reaching for something to hold on to? I can't say, but it comforted me. It still does. Now, more than 3 years later, the pain has dulled, but it's never gone. Her absence is part of me. It lingers in the corners of rooms, in songs she used to hum, in recipes she taught me to cook. I've come to accept that grief doesn't end. It evolves. It lies dormant, then suddenly awakens when you least expect it, with a scent, a memory, or just a quiet moment alone. If I could speak to her again, I'd tell her all the things I didn't say enough. I'd tell her thank you. I'd tell her I'm sorry. I'd tell her how much I miss her, how much I still need her. But maybe in some way she already knows. Losing her changed me, but in that loss I grew. I learned to hold people tighter, to listen more, to live softer. Maybe the cancer wasn't just her story. Maybe it was ours, those of us left behind, and what we would learn from it. That's where I am in my grief. Still learning. I still remember the day I looked into my mother's eyes and knew she had enough. There wasn't any drama to it, no speech, no last-minute burst of strength. Just a quiet nod, a silent understanding that the fight had drained from her, that the pain had taken the final toll. My son, only a boy then, asked gently, "Grandma, are you done trying?" And she gave him the smallest, saddest smile and nodded again. That was the most painful moment of all, not the diagnosis, not even the death. It was that moment, knowing she was still alive, still breathing, but already gone in spirit. That she had accepted what none of us could, that she was ready to leave us, and we had no choice but to let her go. It took months of heartbreak and brief moments of laughter, of blurred hospital visits, morphine confusion, and desperately trying to make sense of it all. Grief, I've learned, is not a single emotion. It's a flood. It crashes in waves. Sometimes it drowns you. Sometimes it pulls back and lets you breathe. But it never really leaves. Even now, years later, I'll hear a song on the radio, Fleetwood Mac or Carole King, and suddenly I'm crying behind the wheel, mascara running, gripping the steering wheel like it's the only thing keeping me tethered to this world. And that's okay. That's part of grieving too. Grief and trauma, whether from loss or betrayal, change who we are, but they also reveal who we can become. If you've lived through the loss of someone you love or the slow unraveling of a relationship built on fragile promises, you know that healing is not a destination. It's a process. This story reminds us to trust our instincts, but also to protect our hearts. If someone breaks your trust, it's okay to demand transparency. It's okay to walk away. And if someone shows you they're capable of growth, genuine, vulnerable growth, it's okay to cautiously lean in, but always watch their actions more than their words. If you're dealing with emotional trauma, seek support. Talk to someone. Therapy isn't weakness, it's survival. Write letters you don't send. Go for walks without your phone. And when grief resurfaces, in a song, a scent, a quiet moment, let it. That's your heart still loving. Protect your peace, honor your pain, and never, ever wait to say the words that matter most. Because life is as fragile as it is beautiful.